Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. I am your host, Tim.
And this is Brian, and I hope you have your bags packed, Tim.
I do.
You know what time it is.
It is time for our Summer Slaycation.
Summer Slaycation.
Yes, and this time we're going to the West Coast, Tim,
Yes.
to start this. But first, I guess we should give a little bit of our idea this year. We like last year after the Universal Monsters, that was its main overarching theme, of the year. Usually we don't. I guess actually that's in the essence of Summer Slaycation. It kind of started with its own theme of a certain like antagonist, and then all his things. Remember, because it started, it was like Jason, Freddy.
Yeah, it was like Horror Icons was our first Summer
Yeah.
Slaycation. I think we continued that into the second one.
Right, yeah.
And then we just started kind of going off onto franchises. But the last one, I think, with the theme was last year when we did the Universal Monsters. And that really, I don't know that it was a theme so much as we just wanted to tackle all of them at one time.
Yeah.
And then this year, I just kind of came on the idea of let's theme this one up because we've got a whole list of potential franchises to cover in our Summer Slaycations. And I mean, it could last us another decade easy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I was looking through the list of ones that we hadn't done yet, and I kind of got this idea that made me think back to my old video store days, because when I was growing up, I remember clearly when VHS rentals first became a thing, because my stepdad had a VCR. Now, we were too poor to afford a VCR, so I didn't. This was like the epitome of wealth to me that my stepdad had a VCR. And so he would take us to the video store to rent stuff, which I thought like blew my mind, that you could take a movie and bring it home and watch it. Like that was like crazy.
Without having to lug the whole theater with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So so we were just like, I mean, this like opened up a whole world. I mean, if you think about it, before VHS rentals, you literally were at the mercy of whatever they showed on HBO or TV or whatever. And
You had to like catch it at the right time.
Yeah, you had to be there at the right time. If there was a movie you wanted to watch, you couldn't just watch it. You literally couldn't watch it. Somebody told you, "Hey man, did you ever see Goonies?" "No, I missed it." "Well, sorry, too bad. You're never going to see it again."
Unless you go at home and do nothing on Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. on
on the off
on
chance
HBO.
that they were actually Goonies is in syndication and actually is being broadcast.
Yeah. Like I remember that was just one of my favorite things when you could get, I mean, it was the early VHS days too, but it was also when cable was big, and the VHSs. Remember even the rentals you couldn't rent for cheap like you could at the time, when it was like the rentals were expensive at one point.
Right.
And it's like to rent a thing was like $90. It wasn't just to purchase it; it was like that expensive. Early. I'm talking about, because I remember my grandfather used to kind of. What he ended up doing, I probably shouldn't out him. Well, he's sadly no longer with us, but he used to, bring home the rentals and then copy them on his Betamax. So it was back in those days. So I think you could buy. Well, no, you could buy the movie for $90, but like the rentals were like it were much more expensive when he was doing this, when I was in California. But then obviously once it became more mainstream, they were like you could go to get the 99-cent rentals and $2.49 at Blockbuster or whatever their deal was. But so it's like but at the same time it's like the rental thing wasn't the same way as it was now. It's like before Blockbuster came, the local video store wouldn't so much have the new first run like movies like they did. Like they would mostly be older stuff that would be on VHS, and a lot of that of course was how most of us in the horror community got a lot of their viewings, because they didn't show horror all the time on TV.
No.
Even with cable, it was not a big thing. like if you just look at David's documentaries, In Search of Darkness documentaries, you see like the box art, is iconic for a reason. It's because that's how most people were introduced to that movie.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today because you didn't know what a movie was about other than the box cover. If you'd never seen the movie, you didn't know what the reviews were. There's a good chance you didn't know anything about these movies other than the box cover when you went into the video store.
Or like word of mouth, like most people would be like, and it's funny how like, you lived in a town with a group of your friends, you could literally spawn your own shortage of a movie by like telling your friends, oh, you got to rent this. Yeah. It's going back tonight. And then they would go rent it. And then it'd literally be never on the shelves for anyone else to rent because like it would go through your whole grade.
It's
Yeah, and people now, like kids nowadays, just probably are like, it just blows their mind. They're like, why would you do that? Why didn't you have that? Because there was no Netflix. And think about it, there's kids out there that don't realize Netflix had a physical component to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to explain this stuff to my kids. Like they literally can't comprehend what I'm talking about because they're like they don't understand the concept of not being able to look up a review of a movie or know anything about it or having to be in front of the TV at a certain time. Like all that stuff's so foreign to them.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I kind of missed that a little bit. I kind of missed the event TV, like when Wizard of Oz was on once a year. And, we've gone over this thing. And how like the Godzilla and the King Kong movies were on at Thanksgiving, and it's like, it was like a yearly event and it was kind of something cool. And while it's great to have it all, there is something like a little bit like to the point of where you have all this, but then how many times you sat there, you're like, I don't know what to watch now.
Yeah. I think you miss, I think convenience robs you of appreciation.
Yeah.
I believe that in everything. I believe it in music. I believe it in movies. I believe it in books. I miss appreciating things on the same level because when you can toss something aside and just grab another one for essentially free, then the first thing that you toss aside just loses all value. And I remember when we used to rent a movie, you didn't watch it one time. You watched it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, it's like you felt like you had to get the most out of it in that 24 hours or 48 hours you had with it.
I don't think when my brother and I first started renting movies, I don't think we ever watched anything one time. You'd watch it 2 or 3 times. And that's how we got started in all of our horror movies. There was a local store. This was before Blockbuster. There was a local store called Chip's Video. And it was a little tiny hole in the wall place, and the guy running it named Chip. I still remember what he kind of looked like. Bruno Kirby from When Harry Met Sally. That's how I picture him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had the mustache and everything, and he had a ton of horror movies. And so we would go in there and just look. I mean, you can imagine as a kid having never been able to go to an R-rated movie because you were too young, and now you've got this whole world of horror movies and you just see all these box covers and just how exciting that was. And it was super exciting when you saw these franchise series like, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. And you're going, oh my God, there's like 7 of these. Like I could watch all 7 of them and I could just rent this one and then I can come back and rent the next one. And my mom, bless her heart, she was like, she really had no idea what we were renting and didn't really care. She would get something that she wanted to watch and let the kids pick out something. And she never really paid much attention to, I guess, or maybe she did and she didn't care. I don't know.
Probably only if you went behind the beaded curtain.
Yeah, we did do.
Say, hey, wait a minute.
And he did have a beaded curtain. I will say that. But so that's where I got my start into watching all these. And so when we were coming up for the idea of the Summer Slaycation, that's what I came back to. I was like, I remember how magical that was walking into the store and seeing these iconic covers and going through these franchises. And even later on, right before DVD. This was like back in high school, and Ken will remember this. We used to go rent the like most obscure, weirdest movies we could find and take them home. And that was like our weekend ritual is you go rent these like weird, obscure horror movies and come back and watch them, not knowing what in the heck we were getting into. Again, at that time, it was you really couldn't look stuff up on the internet or anything.
It reminds me too, because like, what you do now, like with your weekend, your Thursday night, like record store thing, it was like the same thing where remember it's like even harder at one point because to get music at one point, you would have to like, if you didn't go out and buy the whole album or a 40, when there was that transition where the 45s were kind of disappearing and it was like, and the CDs were starting up and all that stuff. And remember if you wanted to hear a certain song, you would like try and catch it on the radio with your cassette player and catch it right at the moment. You know, you'd wait and you'd always get that like snippet of DJ on there. And there was something like cool about that. But the same thing with the album covers, you know, you'd go and there'd be these great album cover artwork. You know, that's why I don't think with you know, like, you know, people are saying, oh, well, physical media will eventually, you know, just fizzle away. I don't think it ever will, because that vast appreciation of the box art to not just music to movies but music, you know,
and the ability to hold something in your hand. I mean, that's why vinyl's making such a comeback. People are kind of backlashing against what I just talked about, which is all this on demand makes you lose the appreciation for it. And I think that's why vinyl's made a comeback, because it forces you to appreciate when you have to pay money for an album and you get to hold it in your hand and you get to look at it and you have to put in some amount of effort even to listen to it.
Yeah.
And you got to flip the album over. All that makes you appreciate it on a different level than you do from clicking a button on Spotify. It just does.
And thinking of you know, if you needed like some physical, like, you know, coordination there, if you wanted to just listen to a song on the,
exactly.
you know, to find the right groove to put it on. Otherwise, you listen to the whole album. And a lot of people probably don't listen to full albums anymore because they could just click to their track.
Well, people say, why do you listen to vinyl records? Is it because it sounds better? I'm going to tell you right now, vinyl does not sound better unless you have a super, super high-end.
You need the TK47 modulator, you know, like that Buck Stereo World.
Yeah, you have to have some high-end equipment to be able to tell the difference between vinyl and, you know, a CD or digital. And even then, you know, if your vinyl's dirty, or it still has the crackles and pops, which I like, because I think
I kind of like too. Like and I've said this before. I like there's a warmth about an album with those little, like the hisses and the little. There's just something about it. I don't know, because I think that's how we were introduced to it.
Yeah.
So to us, it's what it was, you know.
So to me, it's nothing about the sound quality. I don't buy records because the sound quality is so much better. In fact, it's probably inferior, especially on my system, because my system's not high end at all. Yeah. It's definitely not the sound quality. It's just the act of having to buy it, having to put it on, having to listen to an entire side, because I'm not skipping tracks around, because that's hard to do on a record player. It's just the act of it forces me to appreciate the music in a way that I can't appreciate it on other things. And like I said, I still use Spotify. I love the convenience of being able to pick a song and work out in the yard with my music playing stuff. I'm not saying anything against that. I'm just saying it's another way to enjoy a hobby, and people have different reasons for that. But so that was the whole idea behind the Summer Slaycation. So we picked 4 franchises. Now, not every franchise took place entirely in the 80s. So these are not necessarily 80s franchises, but every starting movie in those franchises did originally come out in the 80s. And I think all of them had an iconic box cover. When I went back and looked at these, I was like, every one of these I remember from my old VHS days. Yeah,
and we do need to, speaking of that, we do need to congratulate the horror mailman, David McHugh, as he got our first obscure clue. We're going to be teasing the franchises ahead of time, early, so we teased it, and I literally thought that this one was the second one I had was even I thought would have been the giveaway, but this one was so like bizarro. And if you didn't see what it was I posted a picture of Tom Cruise just dressed as Santa Claus. And so if you looked at it and you're like, what is this? Well, if you read it properly, you might say Santa Cruz. And of course, anyone that knows history of California and the movie franchise that we're doing today, which is The Lost Boys, you know that Santa Carla was, the backdrop was the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk and mountains for most of the shots in the town. There's a lot of boardwalk shots in there. Yeah. Which brought me back. It was very, very nostalgic, which I love going to visit there when I go to visit California. And so we figured Santa Cruz would be the giveaway. Well, he got it right away. Yeah, I will say this.
No hesitation.
Yeah, no hesitation came up right away. The second clue I was about to give you was literally an Apple core and the E from Internet Explorer, and I had it side by side twice. So it was Corey, because of course you know the two Coreys went on to do several movies together, including this one. This might be, I don't know, that's probably their most famous, I would think.
And it was the first two Coreys movie too.
Yes,
this is where they met.
Right. And so, but I think everyone always kind of remembers. I mean, they definitely remember the other ones that they've done. Like, I mean, they did a whole myriad of duds, but this one, of course, was the big one. And, they became essentially a whole brand. Like, can you imagine if they were both alive today and did this now, like the two Coreys? Like, they'd have Instagram, they had pictures, they had everything.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be like, they had stuff back then, but, now God knows what they'd have.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, so the format of this is we're going to spend 2 weeks on each franchise. Now, granted, this episode's probably going to run a little short because we're only covering one movie. We're covering the original, The Lost Boys. There were 2 direct-to-video sequels to this. So the whole franchise is 3 films in total. We will be doing the 2 sequels next week, and then we will be teasing the next franchise in our series.
Yeah, and that one I'm looking forward to because of the... It's going to be one where we actually have a guest on one of the episodes, probably the first episode, I assume, for sure. I don't know how we're going to break up the movies. I think there's 4 total.
Yeah, I think I had it 2 and 2. But
yeah, so we'll do 2 and 2. But the first episode we'll have our special guest. And who knows, if it's one of those cool interviews that go a really long time, we'll put half and half of the interview on to kind of spread that out, too. But it's a cool... I think I'm really looking forward to that as a Summer Slaycation first. And yeah, we'll start to tease that probably... next week, starting once episode 2 of this releases, we'll start giving you things. And once again, we have prizes to give away. So David, we have I don't know if the prizes, did they arrive, Tim?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so as soon as they arrive and we know for sure, we'll let you know, and we'll contact you so we can send it out to you. It's a physical gift for sure this time, and I think it's going to be really cool because we never had something like this to give away.
Yeah.
So this is kind of cool.
All right, well, let's get right into it. Now, again, our Summer Slaycation format is we typically don't do the first chop. We don't do the end fan topic food questions and all that. We kind of just go straight to just focus.
Not even a beer pairing, really.
No.
It's just like a straight
were
franchise.
These were intended to focus directly on the movies. So let's get right into it. This is The Lost Boys, 1987, directed by Joel Schumacher. Joel Schumacher and I have a long history of love-hate, which we'll talk about.
Could he be your first, Red Tim instigator?
Definitely could be. Definitely could be.
That's a thing Cody needs to work on for us, too. Amongst her tomb and her film historian stuff, she needs to come up with the coffee table book, The History of Red Tim. Yes. And each chapter will be the director that and in order, chronological order, how Red Tim developed into the exciting entity that he is today.
Yeah, I will tell you how Joel Schumacher enters into Red Tim after we get through the housekeeping. But this one stars Jason Patric as Michael, Corey Haim as Sam, Diane Wiest as Lucy. By the way, Diane Wiest, does she not always play the clueless mom? Is this the only movie she's played the clueless mom? It can't be, because I feel like every time I see her face, I go, yep, she's the clueless mom.
I mean, Parenthood, she wasn't exactly clueless, but she was a little she was a little clueless. I think she didn't quite understand until the very end what her son was going through.
Yeah, exactly.
She thought she could fix it by, just being her bubbly self, who she is bubbly. And I love Diane Wiest. I think anything she's in is automatically a good movie.
And I don't mean that, I'm trying not to take that as being a negative. Because in this, even in The Lost Boys, she's doing the best that she can raising her 2 sons. I mean, so she's not some complete idiot, but she's clueless as to what's going on in the parameters of the movie.
Right.
Which, understandably, she probably doesn't think about vampires that much. But she kind of always struck me as one of those actresses that plays the kind of mom that's not fully in the loop of what's going on. Bernard Hughes plays Grandpa. He is absolutely the comic relief of the movie. Even though it's kind of billed as a horror comedy, most of the comedy comes from Grandpa, and to a lesser extent,
Corey Haim does a lot because of his panicky and his weird outfits.
Yeah. Some of the kid interactions and stuff. You got Edward Herrmann as Max, Kiefer Sutherland as David. We're missing a big one here, Alex Winter as one of the vampires.
Well, he was down at the very end there, and it was one of his first movies, so I didn't put him on in the credits, but I knew he was in there, but he doesn't have any lines, does he?
No, he's just kind of there. We got Jamie Gertz as Star, Corey Feldman as Edgar Frog, and Jameson Newlander as Alan Frog. So after moving to a new town, 2 brothers discover that the area is a haven for vampires.
Yes. Nice, simple plot.
Yeah, no, I love this plot because it's a very simple plot, but it is so freaking entertaining. I had not seen this movie in years and years and years. And what's weird is I was trying to figure this out because I loved this movie when I was a kid. I remember I don't remember the exact first time I saw it, but I know I rented it on VHS. I know that's definitely the first time I saw it because I never saw it in a theater. But I was trying to figure out, why have I not revisited this movie over and over throughout the years? And I think it's because when I look back on the horror movies that I tend to watch a lot over and over, they tend to be like big franchise movies. Like the Halloweens I've seen a million times. Friday the 13th I've seen a million times. Nightmare on Elm Street I've seen a million times. But those are all parts of these big series. When they're these kind of one-offs, and this was a one-off for decades.
Most of it's most of its lifespan.
One-offs I tend to not go back and revisit. Like Fright Night is a perfect example. I mean, I love Fright Night, but it's not one, for some reason, I don't necessarily go back and watch a lot. And I can't tell you why. There's some exceptions. Poltergeist is one that I've watched multiple times, and I don't consider that a true like franchise. I know it is. It's got there's 3 movies in the Poltergeist series, but to me it doesn't feel like a true like franchise movie. I can't explain to you why I had not gone back and revisited this one, but man, I had a blast doing it because I loved it just as much when I rewatched it, maybe even a little bit more. Just from not having seen it in so many years. And this movie is also so much fun because it has so many Easter eggs. Like, did you notice how many vampire Easter eggs are in this movie? Like in the backgrounds and like... like tons of stuff. So I posted one on Instagram before we started recording. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Brian.
Yeah, with the man bat.
Yeah, so there's a scene where Corey Haim is in the comic book shop and he's standing in front of this comic, and I was like, oh my God, I remember that comic because it was one of my favorite comics when I was a kid. It's a Batman comic from The Brave and the Bold, and it features Batman versus Man-Bat, and I love the character of Man-Bat. Like, I love that. So, and obviously that's an Easter egg towards the vampires, because the vampires in this movie really act like bats. They sleep upside down and all that. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then, so I went and grabbed the comic that I still have from when I was a kid, and posted it on Instagram so you can see it. But I loved all the little Easter eggs in there, and there's this great there's a great sense of humor that runs throughout the whole movie. But like any good horror comedy, there's also some really good, intense horror scenes. It's a perfect gateway movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even though it's R-rated, I think the content is enough that you can show that to a young budding horror fan. I mean, because even the one sex scene in it is not terrible. From what I understand, that was like which I have not seen the sequels to it because I heard they were both horrendous.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to tarnish the original. So I never really bothered to watch it. We'll see it. I guess you'll get a reaction this time. And I heard they go like the exact opposite, like full on like one of, I think the second one I read a description is almost like a softcore version, porn version of it, and I'm like, oh God, they took away. See, that's what I liked about this. Even with all this, there was this sense of and it's probably because of the 80s thing. There was that like childlike whimsy through it all at some level, like you almost saw it through like the eyes of the Corey Haim's age character there. How many times have you seen that in like those 80s movies where it's the kids know what's going on, the parents are clueless, the kids look to a comic book to get them to find out their how to defeat the evil, and parents just chalking it up to, oh, you just read that in the comic book. Yes, you've seen all that so many times, but they do this in a way in this movie that it's like it's such a perfect mix of the horror stuff and with actual vampire lore with little tweaks here and there, and I think that's what makes this movie so special, and that's probably why the sequels are terrible, because they're now taking place years later. I think it's like 2008, 2010.
Yeah.
So the world is different. So what sells is going to be different, and nothing against him, but you're just not selling it with just Corey Feldman returning in it, which I think he's the only constant. Although the second sequel, I think Jameson Newlander returns as the other Frog brother at least. But I mean, like I think the second one has like another Sutherland in it, like the younger one in it. Like
you're right. Yeah, it has a different Sutherland.
Yeah, so they could, obviously they're not going to get Kiefer Sutherland back anyway. But yeah, it's like it's so interesting that how they how like the time period of the movie was why it was one of the main reasons it succeeded, because it was giving you the stuff that people just ate up back then in the 80s. You know, that was such an 80s film in terms of what like our age would love, you know?
Well, I read the trivia on this movie, and one of the trivia things said that this was originally not set to be teenager centric. It was supposed to be skew younger, like sort of like the Goonies. And Joel Schumacher is the one that decided to make the Michael and Star teenagers, to give it a little more sex appeal, I guess, in his terms. But you're right, it still keeps a lot of the childlike. I mean, Corey Feldman had just come straight off the Goonies. I mean, he's essentially the same character in this almost.
Yeah,
he's very mouth-like in this movie. So they still keep a big portion of that like kid adventure, kids against vampires thing intact. So even though they kind of raise the ages of like the two, like the main, I guess the main character, I kind of consider it's kind of hard to say that Michael's the main character. I know he is, but he just, the kids are the focus. Like, he's, even though he's the guy that's getting turned into the vampire, and the whole plot centering around, really what you're watching the movie for is for the Coreys and the kids.
Actually, yeah, and I just looked up, actually, the 2008 one, the first sequel, does have Corey Haim in it and Jameson Newlander. They're down at the very end of the credits, so I don't know if it's since we haven't seen it, I don't know if it's a flashback or just a cameo of some sort, because Corey Haim didn't die until 2010, so he realistically could have actually been in the movie in a and actually both of them, in all honesty, because I mean, he died in 2010, but I'm sure the 2010 version was made right. It's 2010, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well,
wasn't there another one like recently they were trying to make, like coming out like last year or something?
I don't know. You know what's crazy, and it's going to be interesting to see when we go through those, is I feel like I remember watching one of the sequels, and I don't know which one it was. And I remember, and the only reason I remember that is because I remember watching it thinking, I haven't seen The Lost Boys in so long, I'm not going to know what this is referring to. And I don't remember much about it, so that might tell you something right there. But I think I saw one of the sequels, and I couldn't tell you which one it is. Probably the 2008, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I say I didn't see it, but who knows if I I watched pieces of it on cable once or something. Because I think one of them, I know it was straight to video, but I kind of want to say one was like almost debuted kind of like on a cable, like, or something, or we came out around on cable right around the same time.
Yeah,
but oh, that's right. There was the TV show that they tried to do in 2016 that never made it either. But yeah, but either way, yeah, I'm interested to see the sequels again now. Although I have a feeling we're going to be disappointed. But
I was reading also, and I wanted to get your thought on this. Like, there was some talk that this is the movie that kind of set the template for the like modern. I hate to say modern 80s vampire, but the 80s style vampire, like the modern style vampire, which I can see to an extent, but at the same time, there was a lot of vampire movies coming out in the 80s. Like, that was a big thing in the 80s. So you had, before even this film, you had Once Bitten, I think, had already come out.
Near Dark came out a year later.
Yeah,
so.
Near Dark came out very shortly thereafter. I think there was the Hunger. There were several vampire movies around the same time. So I'm not sure that I'm totally comfortable giving them full credit for it, but I think there was something in that era that kind of formulated the idea of the modern vampire. Now, also, Interview with the Vampire came out, what was that, like early 80s, the book? I'm not talking the movie, I'm talking about the actual book.
Yeah.
I think it was early 80s.
Yeah, I'm not sure now.
I'm going to look it up. I think it was, because I know the movie was 1994. The book was 76. So, yeah, late 70s. And it started, and the Vampire Lestat is even more of a modern vampire take. So it was in the literary realm anyway, if not the movie
Right.
realm at this time. So the idea of this modern vampire, like getting away from Dracula and getting away from like Nosferatu, like the Salem's Lot vampires, those were all very still monster-like.
Yeah.
So, the Vampire Lestat was 1985. Perfect timing. So there you go. That's a very rock and roll vampire novel. If you've never read it, it's actually my favorite vampire novel of all time. Is The Vampire Lestat from Anne Rice.
Nice.
But it's the sequel to Interview with the Vampire, but it's very much how Lestat is he's an 80s vampire, basically. I mean, he's very much like what you would see in all these movies. So without this movie, I think you don't get to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't think you make that leap to a lot of these takes on the quote unquote modern vampire before they got twilighted, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah.
But
That's a whole nother thing.
yeah. But I love the idea, though. Again, even in the name of the movie, The Lost Boys, kids who never grow up. They can't grow up because they're vampires. I love the idea of these kids that are going to be teenagers the rest of their lives. And so what are they doing? They're doing what teenagers would do. Hanging out and being stupid for all eternity. Which is weird because Kiefer Sutherland's 17 in this movie. He does not look... He looks like he's about 30.
No.
But so anyway,
Well, because he had that like the little mustache thing going there.
yeah, like a pretty good beard going for 17, I would say.
Yeah, he had a good little run there of being like a little like evil guy because Stand By Me came out right before that, and so it's like he had that like young evil Kiefer Sutherland was kind of scary if you were a kid back then.
Yeah,
just 'cause he was always mean.
I remember
and,
being
evil.
terrified of him for a long time because of all his movie roles.
Yeah.
I was thinking too when I was watching this, I was like, do you think the vampires can also kind of be, in some ways, not just that they're vampires, just that they're older kids, like they're older teenagers? Because I remember when I was that age, like the age like 13, these kids aren't young, the two Coreys. But even at like the age of like 13 and 14, like the kids that were like 18 and 19 seemed so much older and so much scarier, quote unquote. I kind of feel like this movie kind of plays into that as well. Like the fear of that older teenager, but somehow that you're not powerless against them kind of thing. So I don't know. It just kind of struck me as I was watching the movie, like if maybe that was kind of another kind of metaphor for facing your fears of maybe not from a supernatural perspective, but from like those older kids and what you're going to turn into kind of thing.
Yeah.
The scariness of becoming an adult and getting into sex and alcohol and everything that comes with growing older kind of thing.
Yeah, and Kiefer Sutherland, while being a horror comedy, and he, his vampire crew there was not goofy at all. They were creepy. It's like they did a good job of keeping them creepy. And especially when they go into the lair and they're all hanging upside down. I mean, that's a creepy image, or like when they just go just go flying down into the darkness, and when the bridge sequence, stuff like that, or like the opening where they just they come flying out of the air to go get that one guy, the cop or the security guard or whatever,
which I thought was great too, because they never showed them flying, which I think was actually more effective because they did everything from. I mean, probably because granted, with the effects they had back then, it probably would have looked stupid, but the fact that they did it through like POVs and things, I thought it was way more effective, like making it kind of more scary because you never actually saw them fly. I think the closest you get to it is at the very end when the vampires break into the house. One of them comes down and he kind of like falls from the ceiling. So it's like the implication is that he flew in there and like landed. That's like the closest you get to see them actually quote unquote flying. So I thought that was really well done as well.
Yeah, I know, and and of course this had like Jamie Gertz in it, which at that time was like all the high school, all the growing up a young school, high school boy, was like Jamie Gertz was one of the it girls, that everyone seemed to flock for because she was in a bunch of movies right around that time. And it's so funny because now the modern day remember her of the one that would from Seinfeld, her episode there. So That's like the thing. It's so funny how some people like have this whole storied career and they hit like Seinfeld and they were like known for that only.
Yeah, like that's the like they're defining. I know so many people that are just like what's her name? Oh my gosh, that I'm just like completely blanking on her name. That was sitting beside Nightmare on Elm Street 2 guy. Oh my gosh, I just completely blanked.
Oh yeah. Oh my god!
I don't know why I'm having sudden amnesia about these.
No. Of course, she was in. Hold on, I'm gonna pull her up. Because she was and remember Kim. Oh my god, why am I forgetting her name too? Kim.
It's because I'm on the spot on the podcast. She was sitting beside Mark Patton. It was Kim Myers. Oh my god,
yeah,
Kim Myers.
Kim Myers. There you go.
So sorry, Kim Myers. She's lovely.
Yeah, I know. It's not that we forgot you from existence. We just forgot because we weren't prepared to discuss you.
No, she's a lovely person, but she.
She just always eats when we try and bother her. We were just bad timing for her. Yeah. She's always trying to get her lunch when we bother her, so we apologize to her on many levels.
But yeah, so exactly like Kim Myers. Like I know she was in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, but I always will know her from Seinfeld. That's how it is. I'm sorry. Like that was so iconic. But so I mean this movie has a ton of great actors in it. We also had Edward Herrmann, who has always done a great job playing the doofy dad role. Yeah. I mean, he actually played Herman Munster, I believe.
One of my favorite roles he was in was Overboard, where he played Goldie Hawn's like husband. Remember, and he's like, "Why does everyone make me do things I don't want to do?" Yeah. Like, because he was trying to play this like old snooty guy, and it was so funny.
He was actually in an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Oh gosh, he's been in a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah, no, he's had a lot of stuff. He was in FDR and Annie, which just connects back to the horror con, of course.
Yes, he was. He played Herman Munster in Here Come the Monsters, the TV movie from 1995.
Oh, that's right.
I knew he was in one of them.
Yeah.
So he plays a great kind of harmless goofball, which again in this movie is a complete bit of misdirection, which obviously you probably figured out by the time you were halfway through the movie, because I had totally forgotten and I still figured it out. But it was kind of obvious.
I mean, there's definitely clues to if you look carefully the way he reacts really to the Lost Boys, so to speak, and how they react to him mostly. It's like there's a lot of clues if you can look for. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was like there was an attempt. I think they did enough of an attempt to make you still be like the reveal still be okay without it being like a total like I
don't think they were trying super hard to like obscure.
Yeah, like I don't think you were supposed to go like and apologies for those who have not seen this yet at this point, but like those are the people that the reveal of Bruce Willis being dead in The Sixth Sense. It was not meant to be an M. Night Shyamalan twist. I don't think it was supposed to be more of like a kind of like a more surprise to the characters themselves, I think, than
What's funny is I remember when I went in to watch the movie, it's so crazy. I would remember up to the Chinese food scene in the Vampire Lair. Like I remembered that so clearly. Like when I think back to like what do I remember the most about this movie? I haven't seen in 20 years. It was the Chinese food scene, but I had completely forgotten the ending of the movie. So like all that reveal and all that stuff, I had totally forgotten. So it's kind of like I couldn't even tell you how the movie ended when I went back to watch it this time. So it was kind of fun. It was almost like watching it for the first time for me because it had been so long.
Yeah, one of the things I always remember the bridge sequence. I don't know why.
The bridge sequence is just fantastic.
It was such a cool sequence, like because it's such a thing like these obnoxious rebellious teens would do to like totally freak out the new guy. It's like.
And I've always been terrified of like train trestle things because I think it started with Stand By Me. I think that's where that.
Yeah, what's with Kiefer Sutherland and this train connection now?
I mean, the train trestle thing's always terrified me because it started with Stand By Me for sure. Like that's where
I know he had nothing to do with that part, but yeah.
But that's where I got traumatized. And then like I was recently listening to a podcast or something where there was something that happened on a train trestle. Like I don't know if it was or it might have been a YouTube video or something, but it was something where like some people got killed on a train trestle because it was a very dangerous one where you couldn't get across Like there was no like if a train was coming and you were like halfway across this thing, like you were screwed. Like just like in Stand By Me, like what happened in Stand By Me, there was no way to get down off of this thing, and there's no way to like stand to the side or anything.
So you just had to outrun it.
Yeah, and so the whole thing was like completely like the whole idea of that just terrifies me for some reason. So the whole train trestle sequence in this was like super like had an extra level of creepiness to me because it seemed so horrifying.
And it was you know, it was shot really well. How like you couldn't tell how high they really were because of all the smoke that they put down there.
Oh
and,
yeah, it's like you're dropping into like nothingness.
Yeah, and then how you could hear them down there calling them and stuff. I mean, that was a well done, creepy sequence. I mean, I have to say, like, you know, I know. You didn't even go into it yet, right? About why Joel Schumacher created Red Tim, but
no, I haven't done that yet.
But I'll give him props for this one because the atmosphere he created for that sequence and just in general with the way he chose his shots, we got to give him credit for it. But probably should go in real quick to. But now that I teased it, you need to go into why. Yeah, the early stages of Red Tim. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the reason I went into Red Tim with Joel Schumacher is because when Batman came out in 1989, Tim Burton Batman, obviously, and Batman Returns to a lesser extent, I was obsessed with that movie. That was the first movie that I became like literally obsessed with. Like because I had reached the age, I was 15. I'd reached the age where, or 14 turning in 15. And I reached the age where like I was finally able to like form my own opinions and things about things. Like I was at that age where like I knew I liked this movie. And that's when I became a Batman fan. I mean, I became super hardcore Batman fan, comic books. I'd buy anything Batman.
That's funny. Mine came like, I mean, I liked the first one, but mine really hit with Batman Returns because I got to see it. I didn't see the first one in the theater, but I had owned it. I bought it on VHS the day it came out because I knew I'd like it, and of course I did like it. But like the second one, I think, and I got into all the action figure collecting again. And I still have a box of like all the McDonald's. Like remember, I don't know if you remember the McDonald's sodas you could get for Batman Returns. Had a little like frisbee on the top with the Batman logo. Yeah, and I still have the glass Batman thing.
I've still got one of my Batman Returns cups from that.
Oh yeah, no, I have like the fry holders, all hardly used because we went to some. It was McDonald's or Burger King, I don't remember who. I think McDonald's, right? They had But I remember we asked them, they said, do you have anything that like, and some guy totally hooked me and my friends up. He gave us like a stack of like the unused fry containers because they're all flattened still and stuff. So I got a ton of merch. I remember that figure collection. And I was so off on, I don't know if you remember this real quick. We'll do a little sidetrack. I'll get back. But there was rumors that because remember the Penguin came out in the action figure line and it looked like almost kind of like the cartoon Penguin, like with the monocle and the nose, nothing like what Danny DeVito looked like in the movie. And so everyone, back then, there really was like the early stage of the internet, like Prodigy, and you go into the message boards and stuff, and you get little bits in here. And rumors were going around that they were releasing a Danny DeVito Penguin that looked like Danny DeVito that was coming out, and he was like 1 in every 10 cases. So like my friends and I would literally go to the store all the time looking for these Danny DeVito Penguins that never came out. And same thing. Then there was a rumor that the Max Schreck figure was coming out. That never came out. So I remember it was like the big deal is that there was a Robin figure, and everyone thought that at the end of Batman Returns, because remember the figures came out a little before the movie.
Yeah.
So there was everyone was assuming there was gonna be some Robin cameo, and I even remember someone said like, "Oh yeah," like it was like some I don't know, it was like someone on a message board or something where they said like, "Oh yeah," like the end sequence. You know how where they showed like the Catwoman like head pop up looking at the logo.
Yeah.
You know, like at the end. Well, like originally someone said like the ending was really supposed to be Robin, like at the last minute, Robin flies in and just lands in front of the screen and then walks off. And that's why they had to figure out, like it was crazy rumors back then. Yeah. Because there was no monitoring anything in these sites. And so, but anyway, I remember I used to buy like the two most valuable items from that series, believe it or not. You would have thought it was like the villains, like the Penguin or the Robin figure, which was decent. The Batman as Bruce Wayne. It was the Batski boat and the Robin Dragster, which was from another line that somehow got left over. And the Penguin Commandos, which I don't know if you remember, it was just like two penguins in a pack with the like rocket launchers on their back. And I remember we used to go to the store and they used to be the only things left. And so what happened is, I guess someone like decided to buy them up or something, because then all of a sudden they stopped shipping in the future cases because of probably being left on the shelves. So then, and everyone was, of course, going for the Catwoman figure because the female characters back then were always produced less, so they were always valuable. And so it turned out like the most valuable figure, I think, in that line literally ended up being the Penguin Commandos, because they stopped shipping them after that first wave of cases.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like, yeah, it's so funny how things work out like that. Like, I still have the Bruce Wayne, like the custom coupe. I don't know if you remember that. It was a figure where you could put the Bruce Wayne in, and he'd go in there and he'd pull it out, and then it'd become Batman. And so it was crazy. Like, and I still have all those things in my storage right now. But like, and it's like, I'm like, I can't give those up, because remember that was so fun collecting, because it was right before the Star Wars figures started coming out again.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years before the Power of the Force 2 line came out with the, the bulky Luke and Han and all that.
Yeah.
They used to make fun
to go. Yeah, I remember the funny thing about those female action figures. I remember going to the stores, like you said, on the days that we knew the shipment were coming in, just to grab the female ones, because we knew they would do like one female figure per case.
Yeah, and it was everything. I literally had I found like in the Mighty Ducks action figure line. Remember where it was like the cartoon was based off of, where they were the ducks, like actual ducks playing. Like the Mallory was the one female duck that they had, and she would come one in a case, and there'd be three of everybody else. Yeah. So I remember I had her, and I had Eliza Miza from the Gargoyles line, because she would come one per case, and it was like even the Princess Leia originally was like one per case.
Yeah, I remember going to the store over and over looking for Princess Leia.
Yeah, it's so funny how that worked. Catwoman actually was fairly distributed well. I think she was like Batman line. It seemed like everyone was like,
because she was so iconic to the movie. Yeah, I think they had.
Yeah, I think everything was like 2 per case, and like I said, the only thing different is they decided, because everyone was leaving those penguins there because they had no idea what the heck that were. Like, why would I want a Penguin Commando, And that was like remember they had like 18 Batmans that you never saw in the movie, like Skywinch Batman and Commando Batman,
like freeze, and like cold, like
winter
like
gear, Arctic freeze Batman. Like, it was like what? It's like it was what a line that was, just to sell figures, Like there was no not even a remote thing of trying to make it movie accurate.
Yeah, it was so. During this whole time, me and Brian are talking about, like, we were both exactly as obsessed with all this stuff. So you can imagine when Batman Forever is announced from 1995, I am like, oh my God, it's going to have the Riddler in it. It's got Poison Ivy. Like, I'm freaking out. Like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And then Joel Schumacher comes in and takes Tim Burton's fantastic, dark, gritty Batman, which is what Batman is. I don't care what the 60s TV show said, because I never liked the...
that was all camp. Yeah. That was never what the comics were like.
I liked the TV show. I liked the TV show for what it was. Like, I liked it as campiness. But you got to remember, that TV show comes from like the 40s Batman. And the 40s Batman, granted, is pretty campy. Like, if you go right back and read like the old Detective Comics, like, because I've gone back and read like the real early issues, they are very campy. But by the time the 80s came around, or especially the 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, when Batman and Batman Returns came out, the Batman of the 1980s comics was well removed from all that camp stuff. It was much darker. Not as dark as it is today by any stretch of the imagination, but it was much darker. And because we'd already gone past the old Justice League cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon era Batman. Like, it was definitely trending way, way darker. So when Batman Forever came out, and I just see it return to this campiness, it upset me so bad. I was like, I hated it. Now, I love Jim Carrey, and I liked his Riddler and everything. It's not that I didn't like, certain aspects.
And Val Kilmer wasn't really even a bad Batman.
No, I mean, he wasn't like a memorable Batman. It wasn't a bad.
No,
Batman.
I thought he was better. I thought he did a better Bruce Wayne than he did Batman for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's hard to get both sides of it. Like,
meanwhile, Michael Keaton found a way to do both perfectly.
Yeah. But so that's when I got my first started. Like, I hated Joel Schumacher because of how what I would at the time. Nowadays, it doesn't bother me as much because they've made really good Batman movies after him and erased that legacy. But at the time, I thought he had literally ruined Batman, like completely ruined it. So that's why he got on my bad list. Now, Joel Schumacher himself has made some good movies. Like, I love Flatliners. I liked Falling Down. He's did A couple of the Client, Time to Kill, those type movies. I loved 8mm. So he's done some movies that I've liked, but I don't think I've ever really gotten over Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I don't think I've ever forgiven him for those. So it's one of those. That's how he came on my Red Tim list. But Lost Boys definitely
Red Tim list.
Yeah, the Red Tim list. Lost Boys definitely of his stuff. Oh, we should also see he did The Incredible Shrinking Woman, which is a Civil War staple.
Yeah, and DC Camp. I mean, think about it. He directed Sydney in Pain, Sydney Heart Hurt. So for that alone, Tim, you can't totally destroy him.
No. So
yeah, and just imagine, he may have actually said, you know what? No, try it a little differently. He may have been the main source behind Mark Blankenfield's performance of that.
He could very well be. But anyway, so I can't. I'm older and wiser. I don't really have anger towards him anymore or anything. But Batman Forever and Batman and Robin were kind of two unforgivable sins for me growing up as such a huge Batman fan. But Lost Boys definitely, I have to say, is easily my favorite of his films. I look at those IMDb lists now. I don't think I see another one in here that I enjoyed more than The Lost Boys, for sure. Flatliners comes close. I really like Flatliners, but Lost Boys has that nostalgic feel from when I was a kid.
If you think about it, if you look at his IMDb, he does have a wide variety of style of films. He has suspense, he has horror, he has comedy, he has horror comedy, he's got action adventure. He's really got a lot of different things he's dipped his Schumacher in. I was gonna say Tomacher, but that didn't make sense. So I was just gonna say.
He even did a Phantom of the Opera. He's done a lot of different things.
Yeah,
but I think his style, he kind of goes for that campiness. I think worked for this movie. If that campiness is something kind of innate in him, it kind of worked for The Lost Boys. Not that it's campy, but it kind of has that comedic camp, which worked for this because it was supposed to be that. It was supposed to be this juxtaposition of these kind of corny kids juxtaposed with this really horrific, violent gang of vampires. So for some reason, his style kind of worked there, which is kind of weird because he did 8mm, and 8mm is a insanely dark movie.
Yeah,
there is no camp to that. He did that. That was his next movie after Batman and Robin. So you could watch 8mm. I mean, that is no humor in that movie whatsoever. So it's kind of strange that he just jumps all over the place. I don't know.
Yeah,
interesting guy.
You know what? I do want to. Speaking of that, I want to send a challenge out to our good friend Jeff Whitmire here. I want him to write a song that has lyrics back to back that says Schumacher, Stumacher, from Scream, and Miss Tessmacher from Superman. I want to see if he's a way he can get all those into one song.
Oh,
and speaking of that, I'm very excited because the day we're recording this, again, we're going. We have the nighttime ahead where Jeff does his Twilight Zone watch along, and featuring my favorite all time Twilight Zone episode, which was of course Time Enough at Last, which is going to be the second half tonight. So that I'm looking forward to. That's
starring the great Burgess Meredith.
Topic, but. Yeah, and that's that has a lot of lines I would always quote from him, so that'll be good. But back to the Lost Boys. That's what I like about the Summer Slaycation. And when you take away some of the standard stuff and stuff, it does give us the more time to open up to the kind of the spirit of the Summer Slaycation, which is a lot of memories and a lot of different style to the show, which is good at some level. So this works out. Good, and then we get to, of course, rank the franchises, which are good. That's another thing we need to do. I think we need to come up with we need to really update the website again and kind of put all this stuff down there, like our official rankings.
Yeah, that would be
cool. A section of stuff like that.
We've still got still got the history of all of our official rankings for all of our Summer Slaycations and that kind of stuff. That'd be fun to put in there.
Yeah, put that down there onto a thing, like a little section in there. And then, in all honesty, too, we also need a whole thing of all our beer pairings. That may be a task because there's one point where, to go back to our old rundowns were not as easy to spot things.
Yeah.
So that is a chore. But, granted, most, I'd say, out of the 264 regular episodes we had, which would have the beer pairings in it or so, I think probably at least 200 we have written down on there. Pretty clearly.
We got an encyclopedia of Civil War history.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We do need a coffee table book at some point of Civil War.
Problem is we keep making the podcast, so it just be constantly outdated as we added new episodes.
But that's the beauty of it. See,
That's why
then you have to do volume 2. And volume 3 and 4, and God willing,
But
So.
I hope you guys.
And we also should we tease the fact that something, we won't say what, but we do have a possible like follow up to the Summer Slaycation for the first time ever this year. I'm not going to say anything about it other than it will not be immediately after the Summer Slaycation, but it will be around little after it.
Well, I'll put it this way: I thought of a series that I wanted to cover, but we knew that we would probably not be able to cover it on a regular Summer Slaycation for a long time. So but I was so I can't say I'm dying to do it because I'm not really, but in a way I kind of am.
I think the voodoo sale helped.
There was a voodoo sale on it. Yeah, well, that'll be your big hint. But we decided that we may end up doing that as a bonus. There's a reason for it. Not at the end.
And we have it, and we have a name. We even have its own name for it.
So I don't know. Just stay tuned. There may be one bonus franchise coming this year by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we've always starting to do like a Christmas Slaycation type thing.
We do need to do it with Christmas, because we could do all the Silent Night, Deadly Nights in one.
Yeah, that could be a one-off. Yeah, because we've never done those. That'd be a good one.
No, and that's easily one we can do there. So. Then we could even because we usually do Christmas theme movies, and if we just take that as the the first ever Christmas Slaycation.
Yeah.
I think one time, even though I'm doing I think at one point I don't even know how we do it, because we'd never be able to do it in one. We'd literally have to do it in by the time we get to it, probably if we ever do all the Amityville ones, it's literally going to be 6 Summer Slaycations worth. Because I think there's over 60-something Amityville films now, with more announced daily. I think there were 2 announced this year.
For me, that you would only count the core ones. I don't count Amityville Vibrator as an actual Amityville movie.
I see.
I just because it has it in the name, I don't consider it. I would say you'd stop with the ones that.
Well, there is the first 4 that kind of
core
all
4,
seem to be the original, the core 4. But then there was also the one they called, there was another little mini version they called, which I have the box set, which is the Haunted Objects one.
Yeah, there's a
Haunted
Haunted
Objects.
You could
say, but that does not include the Amityville Vibrator as one of the objects. It was the mirror, the doll, or something like that. And that's really when it started to go off the rails. But some of them, a lot of people like. There's that one with the Amityville, It's About Time, with that clock one. Which, that's got to be one of the worst. And we're a fan of puns, and that just, to me, I'm just like, the cringe. Maybe. Yeah, maybe we could do the minis because I think to do that full every Amityville movie, still, I'm not done with my project, and I'm not even going to get close to finishing it anytime soon, because it's just, some of them are so grueling, you need a long break in between. No. And then they keep announcing them, so that's the problem. It's every time you think you're getting close, they're literally, it's the visual interpretation of the scene where, in Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy's running and the hallway gets longer and longer, and she's running and running and longer and longer. And then eventually, there's going to be that part where you speed up and go run through, and then it'll finally finish, because at one point there won't be anything left to put Amityville in front of.
Oh. But I think so you guys could look forward to 1 for sure, possibly 2 more mini Slaycations this year. Yeah. I think this would be cool.
Yeah, because I just feel weird doing Silent Night, Deadly Night over the summer.
Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's got to be a Christmas Slaycation. And
why not? What's wrong with that?
National Lampoon had a Christmas Vacation. Why can't we?
Yeah, exactly. And what there's technically 5 of the originals and then 1 remake, correct?
Correct. Yes.
I think for Silent Night, Deadly Night. Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything other than the first 2.
So you didn't see the famous Mickey Rooney one where he was the most outspoken one of the first one, and then ended up getting conned into doing one?
That's why I'm excited. I got to
because you made him boom, bang, a star. Biggest star in the world. Of course, that's a good old SNL reference that Tim and I seem to make each other laugh at all the time.
I only know Mickey Rooney
I think
from
we'll do
Pete's
that.
Dragon, and I've kind of blocked him out because of Shelley Winters, so...
Yeah, see, Pete. Yeah, he's poor Mickey Rooney kind of got sidetracked because of another Tim Fear.
So,
but
anyway, I hope you guys like this. We're gonna I think the next 2 films are gonna be a little more interesting to cover, because I don't think many people have probably seen them, and they're probably hot garbage, so they're gonna be fun to talk about.
Yeah, and plus it's like it's weird. It's like this is one of these franchises where I can already guarantee you our number one in the point ranking is going to be the original. I would be stunned.
There's no way. No.
There's no way.
No.
It's just, there's
the
no
whole
way.
the suspense of this ranking is going to be which terrible sequel winds up on top.
Which hot garbage comes first,
second,
two or three. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you back here next week for the follow-up, 2 sequels to The Lost Boys. We'll see you then.
See ya.